The Catholic Church uses the word Protestant as a bad word. You ever wonder why? Hey guys, it's John sitting here in my studio with a big mug of water, thoroughly enjoying washing away my breakfast. Wanted to hop on and talk about Protestantism. Over the past couple weeks, I've had several very angry Catholics call me a Protestant. And it's a very interesting concept for them to, first of all, when I say very angry, I mean they come on here literally to try to bash what I'm speaking about because it's antithetical to their teachings, what they believe. I'd like to go on point right now, as I have in many other videos. I have no religion. To call me a Protestant is just to make yourself feel better about your choices. I am not even a Christian. I believe being a Christian would be completely antithetical to what Jesus taught. Jesus said the kingdom of heaven within you, not in some middleman between you and God. So the concept of me being a Protestant is ridiculous, and ridiculous meaning worthy of ridicule. The concept of Protestant is a very interesting thing because the word Protestant comes from the word protest. And it's to publicly object. Now, Protestantism is not about doctrine first. It was about resistance. So it was about resisting the doctrines that the Catholic Church were putting upon Christians at the time. In 1529, theologians and princes of the time formally protested the decisions of the Catholic-controlled Diet of Spire. This wasn't a theological debate. It was a spiritual mutiny against religious tyranny. See, the Catholic Church was a very interesting little feature because they retroactively claimed that Jesus and the disciples were Catholic. There was no Catholicism until about 590, and that is factual. You can go look it up. The Catholics who want to argue with me will say that it's not factual, but the only argument they have is the retroactive theological additions that Catholicism has made to the text. The Catholic faith was not in existence until 590. And on top of that, Christianity itself wasn't even legal until 313 when Constantine made Christianity legal. Not Catholicism, Christianity. The fact that Peter was the first pope of the church is a retroactive hijacking of the stories by the Catholic Church to say that they are the one true faith, Catholic meaning universal. But the Catholic Church kept adding doctrines and theology, and it kept changing the story through the Middle Ages when Dante and the 1300s, and Dante wrote his Inferno. Those things started to work their way into the Catholic faith and the belief. And the Catholic faith very quickly became a corrupt empire. Popes became kings, political power rivaling monarchies. They were as powerful as a king of any country. They were fighting the monarchies of various countries. The popes were a power center. They were the power of their own kingdom, which was the Catholic Church. The Catholic Church was selling indulgences. The wealthy could buy their forgiveness. They could do horrific things their entire life and buy forgiveness at the end of the life. That's really the sacrament of the last rites is about. It's about buying your forgiveness so you go to heaven rather than hell, even though you were a butthead your whole life. They started using Dante and these concepts that had nothing to do with Scripture: purgatory, hell, penance, confession. All these things had nothing to do with Scripture. It's not in Scripture, period. And the ordinary people were spiritually starved because a lot of them couldn't afford to do the things that the church was telling them they had to do. But they were institutionally dependent on what the church was saying was true. But the truth was not true in the fact that it was a retroactive hijacking of the stories. So what sparked this gigantic protest? Martin Luther's 95 Theses in 1517 started the fire. But by 1529, the flame was a forest fire. People were going crazy because the church was literally trying to impose more and more. And the Diet of Spire outlawed the Reform movement. It outlawed the idea that you can change what the Catholic Church was telling you had to believe. It demanded Catholic orthodoxy. The people who wanted reform protested the loss of religious conscience and freedom. And it wasn't just a split, as a declaration of spiritual independence. They wanted to have that direct relationship with God that the scriptures talked about, but the church was saying you had to do this other things. You had to jump all through over these hoops or through these hoops to get there. The protest was about debunking the Catholic claim of spiritual authority, which still today we have the Catholics who will come on and call me a Protestant because they think I'm protesting. I'm not protesting them. They can believe whatever they want. The reason they're angry with me is because they make sense. Because I'm literally giving you factual evidence that they only have arguments that is from the Catholic Church theology. But when I give you factual evidence and factual dates, it's because I did the research. This concept that the Catholic Church has spiritual authority is a chosen authority that they gave themselves. The Catholic claims that the Pope is the successor of Peter, that Peter was the first Pope and it came up through. And yet, that's only a theologic choice by the Church. We've decided that Peter was the first Pope in 590 or much later, right? We've decided he is the only way. He was the first Pope, and that all the popes behind him are the successor to Peter. But men voted on every Pope. Men went in and said, this guy is now in charge. So there's this hierarchy of having to lean into this Pope that is supposedly infallible. And there's no historical evidence of Peter ever being a bishop of Rome. And the early church had no popes. Popes were a later addition. And now a quick word from our sponsor. Coffee Time with John. This channel runs off coffee, so get your coffee and tea at johnsjoe.com. Catholics claim that the church can interpret Scripture. Only the church can interpret Scripture. This protest was about the personal access to the divine, was finding their spiritual truth within. As I often say, and as my mom, who had her master's degree in liturgy, said, spirituality is a personal journey. Go find what you believe. Catholics are trying to tell you you can't. The reason you're a Protestant is because you're protesting the fact that you're not subjugating yourself to the rule of the Catholic Church. The Catholics claim that the Catholic faith is the one true faith. I have never had a more judgmental group of people attack me than the Catholic people. I go home for my Christmas this past year, and there's half of us are not Catholic, or most of us are not even Christian, and half of us are Catholic. They sat in separate rooms because the Catholics didn't want to be with the rest of us. And that was okay. They chose that. That's their choice. They chose to be judgmental and superior. And in reality, whatsoever you do to the least of my brothers, that you do unto me. He's saying we're equal. He's saying we're all one. And there is no, in my Father's house, there are many mansions. Catholic being one, Protestant being one, Episcopalian being one, Buddhist being one, Hindu being one. There are many ways to God. God is too big and beautiful to be encompassed by any one school of thought or religion. The protest was about the concept that the Catholic faith was claiming that they had the sole authority of God. And the Protestants were saying that the Bible and the Scripture says that we have a direct connection to God. God is within us. And the protest in 1529 was to say to the Catholic faith, you don't have that power anymore. And the real message of the Protestants was return to Scripture. Let go of this doctrines and dogmas that you're adding to the Scripture that is not in the Scripture. Come back to faith and grace, not fear and guilt. A direct relationship with God that's personal, direct, and not controlled by hierarchy. This whole concept of Protestantism was a reclaiming of inner spiritual authority, finding that direct connection to God fits in. But, Jeshua never created a hierarchy. He taught individual empowerment. The kingdom of heaven is within you. Whatever you ask in God's name is granted. God's name is I am. Not he is, not she is, not he was, not I will, not I was. He taught individual empowerment. He taught the idea that you have a direct connection and a direct relationship with God. The Catholic Church is designed to take all that power away from you and make you subjugated to the doctrines and dogmas of the Catholic Church. His message was twisted by the church. into rituals and rules. Protestantism tried to course correct, but still fell into new dogmas. One of the reasons I'm not a Christian is because it's completely antithetical to what he taught. He said the kingdom of heaven was in you. He said that the idea that you have a direct relationship with God, the Father and I are one, and you must become one with me as I am with the Father. He literally was saying to you that you have the power within yourself to have a direct connection with God. And to be a Protestant is to protest someone trying to take that power away from you. And the reason I'm not a Christian and I'll never be a Protestant is because I don't believe in the concept of Christ, an anointed one who sets himself apart from others, an anointed one that we have to go to reach God. It's completely antithetical to what he taught. The original protest of the Protestants was aligned with that message: freedom, not fear. Protestantism began as a bold stand against spiritual manipulation of the Catholic Church. They didn't want a new church, they wanted a new relationship with God. The protest wasn't against faith, it was against the corruption of faith. It's about saying we don't need all your new doctrines and dogmas and rules that subjugate us. And, we're no longer living under a fear-based system of spiritual middlemen. That's what the protest was about. Maybe it's time for the rest of us to protest as well and understand that we can return to the divine within ourselves. We can step back into our own power and understand that it's a protest against ruling authorities who are trying to say, you have to be and think as I do. This concept of someone calling me a Protestant is not about me being a Protestant. It's about them labeling me to make themselves feel better. They've decided that I am this. No one gets to choose what I am. I am the one who gets to choose what I am. And I am love. And when you come on the channel and you scream and yell and holler vitriol, and then you try to label anybody who thinks differently than you, a Protestant, someone who's protesting. Remember, the reason we're protesting is because you're not living up to Jesus's teachings. You're not living up to love. You're not being love. You're being judgment and hierarchy and rule. And you're trying to say. I've had multiple people come on and tell me that I wasn't a true Catholic. Well, I was born into a Catholic family. My mom had her master's degree in liturgy. I did 12 years of CCD. I was an altar boy. I was a reader. I was the one who shoveled the walks in the church. The priests of the diocese were friends of my mom and were at our house every week. The priest, knew I was Catholic. Everyone else knew I was Catholic. So the fact that you're saying I'm not a true Catholic, it's not about me not being a Catholic. It's about you being a Catholic and not understanding that being a Catholic is against the rules and the ideas or the teachings of Jesus. And that's my thought on this. And you guys have a great day, and I will talk to you soon. See you. Bye.